This is a story about two other guys that took a chance. The name of the story is Changes in Latitude. New Orleans, also known as the Crescent City, also known as the Big Easy, is certainly one of the world's unique places. I think its geography contributes to because it's almost at the terminus of one of the world's largest rivers. The river has been its window, and the vessels that sail on the river are a camera that snaps shots and take the city upstream to other places. There's a kinship among river towns. Natchez, Vicksburg, Memphis, St. Louis, all have a little New Orleans in them. Or maybe New Orleans has a little of them in it. Whatever the reason, the Big Easy is an attraction. Visitors have come for 2 centuries to shop, party, sin, and become incognito in the French Quarter, its bars and its brothels. The Crescent City is certainly more than one large gentleman's club, but that's a sort of an image that I think the city's kind of proud it maintains. It's a city of sights, sounds, smells, and culture that has attracted conformers and nonconformers for years. Forgive me, Lord, for what I'm about to say, but there's just something fun about singing. Male and female are not immune, and if we don't partake, we are enthralled that we saw where it all went down, or maybe where it all came off. They say the biggest towns in Mississippi are New Orleans and Memphis. Took a while for you to get that one there. Y'all aren't too sharp on your geography. I don't think there's a young man in the state that by his 19th birthday has not made at least one trip to New Orleans, and I believe the statistics are pretty similar for females. In the 1950s, there was a special train that ran from Jackson, Mississippi to New Orleans and back each day. It was called the Rebel. Howdy-toddy. This proves the desire to be connected to the Big Easy. Native New Orleans believe that there's no other place to live. When they meet each other for the first time, they're more interested in where you went to high school than where you went to college. Is that right, Bobby?
It's true here.
Those of us who have tried to become a part of the city most often have failed miserably, regardless of our desire. It is said you'll never change New Orleans, but New Orleans will sure change you. This is the story of 2 young men. 2 young men that migrated from the poorest state in the nation to a city that they thought offered them a way out. To a city that they were told had opportunity. To a city they were warned could be dangerous to their character, but offered a better way of life if they would keep their heads about them. I was one of those young men. My dad told me, son, when you grow up, go to New Orleans. They've got more money in that Whitney Bank than all the other banks in Mississippi put together. My dad will later, you'll find out in another story, my daddy later changed his mind. Go where the money is, he said. There are a number of explanations for the name Big Easy, but most agree it goes back to that live and let live lifestyle. It is a place that if only for a short time, one can get lost in almost any type of sin or debauchery that satisfies their personality and at the same time stimulate your art and intellectual senses. Out of this melting pot of cultures, Spanish, French, Italian, German, Scottish, Irish, African, and American, no other place in the world atmosphere exists. The French Quarter, also known as the Vieux Carré, is a town within a city, a town that is as unique as any that exists. On any given day, a stroll down Bourbon, Chartres, or Royal Streets, you may encounter coat and tie businessmen, strippers on their way to work, hookers coming home from work, musicians, magicians, gutter punks, and folks, even witches. Of all that pervades the French Quarter of New Orleans, nothing is more unique in the fact that the entire economy is fueled by music. The music that emanates on the streets and in the bars. Jazz. Yes, you've heard of jazz, but there's much more. There's rhythm and blues, there's metal. There's occasionally you'll still hear bluegrass, country, or even gospel possibly. Folk too. The other young man came searching for fame and fortune also. We did not know each other and would not for many years, but we were coincidentally both in the city in the summer of 1966. I was seeking summer employment in the marine industry. there we go, the river again. He was seeking employment in the entertainment industry. Neither of us had any money, but we didn't care. The city would take care of us, and I suppose it did. As I have said, he became my friend in later years. His name's Charlie Hewitt. Charlie is and was a musician and had two bandmates and formed a trio they called the Cellar Dwellers. They were starving to death back in Summit, Mississippi. Those were hard times, and they had heard that the land of milk and honey was just down Highway 51. I never heard them play, but I expect they were somewhere between decent and good. Everyone wanted to be a star in those days, and people with much less talent than those three, they had made it big. Three guys packed up their gear and set off for fame and fortune. After all, it was the city of Fats Domino, Clarence Frogman Henry, Frankie Ford, Lloyd Price, and others. Certainly, there was room for three more guys with stars in their eyes. That would have been in September. They packed their goods, their gear, and away they went. Charlie and I have discussed that summer several times, and this is what Charlie says about the city. I moved to the French Quarter in the September of 1966 to sing at the Bayou Room on Bourbon Street. I was coming from a small Mississippi town of about 1,200 people. I went from the job of making $50 a week to singing on Bourbon Street, making $185 a week. My head was in the clouds and it was spinning. I knew I had died and gone to heaven. I could only describe it at the time as like getting paid for sex. Singing on the Bourbon Street felt just that good. Having known a lot of Charlies in my time, I read into what Charlie was saying, but more or less I read what Charlie did not say. Could Charlie be saying the lure of the lights and the freedom to be him was more than he could stand? Could he be saying that the Crescent City offered him an opportunity to escape what he perceived as a society of pious judgment? Could he be saying, yes, Marie Laveau, you have a hold on me? Charlie continues, whatever the essence of New Orleans, the French Quarter was and still is, it went straight into my veins, just like heroin into an addict. And every time I return, I get the feeling as if I've never left. It's a warm feeling, a safe feeling, a feeling that I belong. There's no logic to it. I love the shops. I like the places to eat. I like the musicians, the street musicians especially. I like Jackson Square. I like the artists. And I like the streetcars. I love the streetcars. As to me, I grew up believing that only in America could a kid like me grow up to be president. Obviously, I didn't. But I'm not alone in my failed aspirations. I will bet that almost all of you out here tonight, since you are an adult audience and professional, have not reached the potential of the person you had hoped to be. If you are materially motivated, you did not make the CEO list of a Fortune 500 company. If you are spiritually motivated, you do not become a Billy Graham or Peter Marshall. But most haunting of all are those of us who are compelled by the right side of our brain. That is, those of us who have, or think we have, some sort of art, talent, base, drive. You see, we seem to be the most uncomfortable in our own skin when we don't achieve, ever searching and ever longing. If transposing an idea or image to canvas through your fingers and a brush is what has motivated you, I doubt, at this point in your life, I doubt you're going to become a Picasso. If you're a wordsmith, I doubt you're going to become a Shakespeare or a Longfellow. If your expression is music, I doubt you're going to become an Andrew Lloyd Webber or even an Elvis Presley. What haunts all of us is we know we could have been. We often ask ourselves what we could have done differently, and if we had, would we have accomplished our ambition? When these things don't happen to us, we tend to want to blame. This story was originally titled The Fork in the Road. You know the story. The story where you have to choose the direction you take. Sometimes we don't have a choice. We're forced to take the other road because one prong of the road is closed, muddy, out of your control, unable to pass, or at least that's the way we've perceived it all these years. What does that have to do with New Orleans? For Charlie, it was a tragic exit from the city and a creative, talent-laden mind that has been haunted because he could not or did not make it back to continue his dream. Charlie was forced to detour. The other fork was forced on him on an October morning in 1966. It was forever the end of the road for his two bandmates. In the 1960s, things were a lot different. The quarter was more of a haven to artists than it is now. There were less t-shirts shops, and it seemed to me that the music was more authentic and than what you get now. But in 1966, to a 19 and 22-year-old kid, we didn't have anything to compare it to. We didn't really know. I first appeared as a temporary resident in New Orleans in early June 1966. I was waiting to catch a ship for summer employment, but while waiting, I got a job at a bar on St. Charles Street. It was called Casey's Lounge, but no relationship to me. Not much of a bar. It was a seaman's bar. Quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, it was a dive. Also, it was not in the French Quarter, but closely connected enough to be able to be a part of that happening. By the time Charlie, DeSalle, and Lonnie, the Cellar Dwellers, had arrived, I'd shipped out, but our experiences of being in the quarter at about the same time must have been similar. It seems that in that world where we worked, many of the businesses had a dark side. There it's evident that many of the bars, strip clubs, gentlemen's clubs, and music venues were owned or operated by what we imagined to be organized crime. No one really told us this, and we could not prove it, but it was implied, and we believed it. We'd been warned about it. After all, the rumor that organized crime had killed John Kennedy was still fresh on our minds. I knew when I became employed that I had been baptized into the lower ranks of what was known as the French Quarter people. It mattered not if you were a bartender in a dive, or a first-rate band leader like Leon Kellner at a fine hotel, a street musician, or even a hooker. You were part of the entertainment industry, the lifeblood of the quarter, and you were protected. We had privileges. We had contacts even though we did not know them by name. They didn't know our name either, but they knew that I was the new kid working at Casey's bar and Charlie was the guitar player over at the Bayou Room. They protected us as if it were our birthright, and only because of who we worked for. It had nothing to do with who we were. Our given position or status was certainly temporary, and it would always be changing. Cover charges were waived for us wherever we went. Sometimes drinks and meals were free. Gee, New Orleans was the place to be. But even at 19 and 22 years old, we were just babes in the progression of life, not ready for what lied us ahead. For me, it was a brief partial summer as one of the protected ones. Then I left on a ship that sailed between the east and west coast. After a couple of exciting months on a tanker, I got a call. Uncle Sam wanted me on behalf of my friends and neighbors. This would eventually, not immediately, lead to a stay at Fort Pope, Louisiana. I had taken my fork, and a return to the Big Easy was not likely, and it was not expected. $185 a week. It's time to move the family down. Charlie's band members were going to return home that Saturday night and move their families. But someone crossed the line. Someone crossed the yellow line on the causeway. Charlie was not in the car, but both of his bandmates were killed. Charlie packed his clothes, closed his guitar case, and left his job. He left his dream. And at the time did not know that the course he would take would be forever altered. For me, 7 years passed. College, military, marriage, and here I am. The road brought me almost back. On a clear day, I can see the skyline of New Orleans. You see, I live just across the lake. You might say I dabble in New Orleans. I go in for its benefits, and I retreat to the suburbs for those benefits. Each is strikingly different. But if the truth be known, you can't dabble in New Orleans. It's in your veins. This is what Charlie says. I still hear the sounds of a jazz band far away playing way down yonder in New Orleans. As I smell the gumbo, the lucky dogs, and the beignets, and they drift into my nostrils, I try to sear that memory in my brain so I can recall it up and enjoy it over and over again. Folks, those were Vietnam years. Both he and I had military obligations. Neither of us were in Vietnam, but we still had obligations. The obligation was directly connected to my departure and his failure to return. Charlie became a commissioned officer in the Mississippi State National Guard. By the time he received his commission, over a year had passed. Some of the desire to return to the Big AZ had waned, as he had other offers. As artist dreamed, one such offer assured him of fame and fortune, but it really only stole time from him when it could have been used more productively. There was no fame or fortune. Now Charlie only returns to the city to visit. Almost always, he finds himself in front of what was the Bayou Room. You don't have to ask him what he's thinking. You know. For every action, there's a reaction. The music at the Bayou Room could not die. Shortly after Charlie closed his guitar case, another young man would walk in and open his. This time and forever after, the Bayou Room music would never be the same. The young man's name was, you want to guess it?
Jimmy Buffett.
Jimmy Buffett. That's right. I can't help but wonder, did New Orleans and the Bayou Room make Jimmy Buffett? Had circumstances been different, could Charlie have been Jimmy Buffett? I sat with Charlie as he told me the story, realizing how two Mississippi boys were influenced by the biggest town either one of us had ever seen at that point. Charlie picked his guitar up. He squeezed out a few chords that really went nowhere. He then said almost inaudibly, I may still have a chance. That city's still in my blood. We both sat quietly for a moment, waiting for someone to say something. Nothing was said. Then Charlie says, my music has always been an escape for me. I try to write a song a day, and I enjoy an audience, whoever and wherever it is. He picks up his guitar again. I don't think that he was thinking about himself, but I think he was thinking about a lot of people he knows. This time the chords were familiar, and so were the words. It's been the ruin of many a good man, and Lord, I know I'm one.
Jimmy Buffett was also a journalism major.
I'm sorry. In my excitement, I thought most of y'all knew it. Charlie Hewitt, stand up. Charlie wrote this song for me, or about me, and others, but I like to say it's solely about me. It talks about my stories, and it was written for me. So we're going to play just a little bit of it for you.
Tell me a story, dream me a dream, sing me a song, make me smile, make me cry, take me with you to that sweet by and by. I won't be sad, I won't cry, when I read your words. Some stories scare me, when it's late at night. But sometimes I will stand and fight. I will be the preacher who lives a fair lady. I won't be the millionaire that all folks do. You may be right, but the young soldier came home.
You got that hors d'oeuvre, because supper's turning out to be late.
I'm going to go to the ladies' room. I have not been yet.
I've been drinking a lot more water lately, so I've been making more trips.